Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 56 of Fracking Nightmare. And I got to acknowledge my thanks to Vanessa Vine for stepping into the Plymouth studio last week and hosting episode 55. I know how much pressure she was under to get the episode prepared, and I think she did an absolutely outstanding job. And, of course, focused on the impact of this abomination in Pennsylvania, where sadly, of course, they've been exposed to this insidious industry for even longer than my good friends in Australia. So thanks very much, Vanessa. Excellent job. Hopefully it won't be the last time that you host Fracking Nightmare. Well, I am back in the southwest of England, at least briefly. And before I get on to the main discussion of the evening, I want to revisit the UKOG saga and the Chief Executive Officer of UKOG, known as David Lenigas. Now, in my opinion, this guy is an unconvicted fraudster. He has history, and basically history is repeating itself in the fact that, once again, I've got my microphone on. Well, history repeating itself in Horse Hill, where David Lenigas is desperately trying to convince the investment community that the reserves under the Weald in southern England are at least equal to those under the North Sea. Now, I think the vast majority of people see that that probably is not based on too much fact. Well, David Lenigas was called on the first report that was published by Newtek in April, which claimed that the reserves in the Weald were at least equal, if not greater than that of the North Sea. And the investment community reacted by buying into that mythology, and the stock price jumped by some 300%. But it didn't take too long for people to do a little bit of analysis and actually question that, and the stock price began to fall. And in fact, less than 48 hours after that announcement, the alternative investment market asked David Lenigas to provide clarification. In other words, they weren't convinced either. Well, he did that by engaging Schlumberger. And the report that Schlumberger produced is online. And all you got to do to find this is search for UKOG, UKOG, space SLB, UKOG and Schlumberger. So you can read the correspondence between Schlumberger and Stephen Sanderson of UK Oil and Gas Investments PLC. Now, Schlumberger put a very interesting disclaimer in this correspondence, and I'll just share this with you. It says, under no circumstances should any interpretation, recommendation, or reservoir description be relied upon as the sole basis for any drilling, completion, well treatment, production, or other financial decision, or any procedure involving any risk to the safety of any drilling venture, drilling rig, or its crew, or any other individual. The customer, UKOG, has full responsibility for all such decisions and for all decisions concerning other procedures relating to the drilling or production operation. The bottom line is what Schlumberger is saying here is that, we're going to produce the report, but we absolutely take no responsibility whatsoever for its contents. Well, as I said in my brief report from Amsterdam last week, it's my conjecture that Schlumberger simply decided that they would keep the customer happy and basically give him what he wanted, which was a report to substantiate the previous Newtek assertions. Well, this is what happened. We can see here on this chart across on the left-hand side here, this is the point at which the Newtek report was released. So we can see that the stock price jumped from around a penny up to 3 pence. In fact, I believe briefly it got above 4. But it's a significant jump. There's not too many stocks that would jump by 300% in a single day. But you can see that the market quickly weaned off the report here and was somewhat dubious. But then it did come back up. It did get back up to 3 pence again. And then it sort of tailed back down to around about 2.5. And this is where the Schlumberger report came into play here, as David Lenigas was desperate to provide the much sought after clarification for the alternative investment market and for the investment community. But look, the reality is that although there was a small jump, it didn't even get above the 3 pence marker, and quickly dropped down under 2 pence. And this despite Schlumberger claiming that the New Tech report numbers had undercooled the original reserves by as much as 70%. So the investment market singularly unimpressed. So the bottom line is that once again, I would suggest that anybody putting money into UKOG is effectively throwing it into a literal and metaphorical black hole. Anytime that Lenigas claims he's got a massive find, be very suspicious. Like I've said, he's done it before and he will probably do it again. He's desperate to establish some credibility for his operation in the south of England. So anyway, the bottom line is I don't think we're going to see David Lenigas, UKOG, or any of the other companies in the south of England anytime soon. But in the short term, we have more of a threat, perhaps back up in the desolate northwest. And I'm joined this evening by Tina-Louise. Tina, hi, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Well, it's been a long day, but yeah, it's over now.
Yeah, it's been a long day. It's also been quite some time since you were last on Fracking Nightmare, I think. And you've been doing been quite busy in that time, because in the meantime you actually ran against George Osborne in the elections, standing for the Green Party.
It was really good. I can't tell you how worthwhile that was to me. That to me was just another form of activism. You know, I mean, I've tried all sorts now, standing at roadsides, signing petitions, complaining to my councillors, talking to MPs, you know, slowing trucks, being hurt by the police, attending marches. And to me, the politics side was something I hadn't tackled yet. And also, I think I really wanted to know what it would be like to be within that, attempting to get into where the power is abused, and just even for the sake of the two debates with George Osborne, it was absolutely worth it. It helped clarify for me that we are absolutely right to be worried, and that what we're doing is essential, and that without the frontline protests, the camps, shows like yours, independent media, we have no democracy beyond that. It certainly doesn't exist in the world of politics that I discovered. So,
well, that's becoming very clear. Let me ask you? Did he offer you a line of anything?
He's very awkward, really awkward, and he doesn't have much to say. That's when he's scripted and he knows what he's saying. He's a good delivery, but as soon as you took him off script, there was just nothing there. The man's
shallow.
He really fumbles.
Yeah, he's shallow, like most of them on the front bench, like you say.
And, I have that thing that I do, which is even if I meet someone who is not necessarily, I'm not going to like what they do, I try and find the human they are, the baby they were when they were born, where you could have loved them for a few minutes. And you try and find that inside their soul,
And let me guess, it was a bit of a struggle with George Osborne.
Not just a struggle. I think I got deep down to depths that were quite murky. I felt like there was just this bullied child. And it was so hard to find something to empathize with. And I usually can, and I really struggled with him. And I felt sad and sorry that we're right. You don't want to be right. Sometimes you want to wake up and find out, hey, you know what, it was just all wrong and everything's fine, really. Trust the guy in the suit. But, it's not. And
these guys have sold their soul. They've absolutely sold their soul, and they've sold the souls of the British public. And in return for what? A shallow existence where basically they are not their own person and they know it.
Do you know when it was similar to as well? When we gave evidence in the House of Lords, I think it was December 2013, I think that was. And again, looking around Nigel Lawson and all of that, and you looked at the Lords and it was the same thing. There was this ugly, hollow, there was joyless. It was just joyless, where I thought, you know what, no matter how little I have, I'll walk out of here and there'll be warm company. Yeah, at least, and so even if you haven't got as much on the table, the warm company more than suffices for that. It truly makes up for it. Because I just think that their existence, they have no idea what they're missing,
Well, they are shells of I mean, if there is any humanity left, it is a shell. I mean, it has effectively been sucked out of them.
Yeah.
And, in return for what?
Yeah, and I just don't get, I do get it. I get how, because I was going to say I don't get how they sleep at night, but I do, because they don't understand. I don't think they get it. I just don't think they're able to think beyond their world, their bubble, to ours.
Yeah, but that's why the Commons bar is where they all hang out. Because basically they're not capable. Most of them are not capable of a social life outside of the Commons.
They're only safe in each other's company.
Exactly. And of course, so they drown themselves in this heavily subsidised bar. And, of course, I mean, some of the stories have been coming out, from retired bar staff there. Yeah. And it's horrendous. I mean, and of course, the number of convicted drunks and, convicted anything in Parliament. Of course, it should be a lot greater.
They might as well just put bars on the damn thing and lock it.
Yeah, lock them in. I mean, yeah.
It's just on the inside than we would outside, I think, in that circumstance. But yeah, it's a sad state of affairs. But unfortunately, it kind of fuels your soul, because you realise that really you have no choice but to keep on fighting. Because until what happens if we stop? Then what? This is what we leave our children. Not only dangerous enterprises like fracking, but we also leave them where their government is attempting to limit their human rights, stop them from being able to protest. So, what would it be like if we weren't fighting a couple of years from now? You just have to be penned in your box and not able to fight back. So I think that's one of the biggest fights. It's because it's not just fighting fracking, is it? I think what we discovered along the way, ever since Balkan particularly, was that beyond fighting fracking, we're also exposing the lack of a democracy and exposing the lack of real media and truth and honesty. And that then makes communities and people who look into fracking for the first time realize that now they have to question everything.
Absolutely. I have to say, Tina, I think, the whole unconventional gas agenda is an absolute gift. In fact, we would really have a problem, I think, if all of a sudden they pulled the rug from under the unconventional gas agenda, because this is pulling people together right across the country like nothing before, with the possible exception of poll tax. But, this is literally uniting people from right across the social spectrum. They're beginning to realise that, this isn't the usual suspects. This is Middle England suddenly realising that the democracy that they thought existed is a charade.
And, there's no more Middle England than perhaps like the residents' action groups that are all around this area. And Residents' Action on File Fracking, Ian was interviewed the other day. And I think the BBC guy said to him, so what's this doing to your community? And Ian answered, and I was like, it really made me think. It was like, the community only exists because of this. Prior to fracking, the community we now have didn't exist. It was just people going about their lives and not realizing they were a community until they needed to stand together. It's like one of those old movies where the Earth is threatened by a meteor, and finally everyone has to stand together and say, oh, it's our planet. We need to kind of look after where we are. We're all under attack. And that's what it's like at the moment. And that's why it was, I wouldn't say it was easy with fracking, but certainly every public meeting we ever did was smooth, in that you just walked in, you said, this is a process of shale gas extraction, it'll affect your air and water. Yeah. And instantly, everybody's on the same page as you. Everyone has the same vested interest in air and water. Whereas when you're fighting war or fighting student debt or fighting, whatever you're fighting, it's niche. Everything's niche. It's all, and it's designed to divide and separate us. Whereas this breaks down more barriers than I've ever seen,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Most of the other issues are, to some extent, exclusive. Yeah. They exclude certain groups not deliberately, but just because they're not affected. They're not interested. It doesn't impact on their daily lives. But the beauty of this issue is that it is inclusive. It is totally inclusive. Everybody is affected by, the potential for the contamination of the water, the soil, the air. It doesn't discriminate. So it impacts on everybody.
Yeah.
And, so this is what we're seeing right across the country. I mean, I believe that there's actually 17 completely separate, autonomous, independent anti-fracking groups just on the Fylde Peninsula.
Oh, yeah.
35 plus in Lancashire.
Yeah.
All operating separately, independently and autonomously.
And I know this is what works, and this is what we saw in the early days when we went from 3 groups to like 300 groups, is that we saw it happen in the best way, which was no one wanted to control it, own it, or be the leader. Everyone just wanted everyone else to be doing what they were doing. So as soon as you planted a seed in a community with a group, like when you did your talks all around the country, when we've done ours up here, and as soon as you planted that seed and walked away, you never wanted to create a clone of the group you'd just come from.
Yep.
You wanted to see what the hell that would blossom into. And the diversity between the groups, the different approaches, the ways that they utilize the different tools available to us, and the way that they cross social boundaries is just quite astounding, really. If you had the time to look at this as a social study rather than a damn fight for your life, there would be so much pleasure in observing, the personalities and the people and the way it all happens. But there's no time for that, unfortunately.
Well, interestingly, there are a number of PhD students actually pursuing exactly that line of inquiry. And, my only concern, of course, is that their research will actually serve to maybe help the establishment identify a way by which they can start to challenge this unique movement. And, I mean, we know that they have, at the moment, they are struggling. They have no idea how to deal with the 300 groups and rapidly growing. And any time a community perceives that they are being targeted, it immediately unites that community. And like I said, it's a gift.
Yeah, and there are times also, like for the individuals involved in the groups, where we duck down, where you just kind of go quiet for a little while because maybe you've had too much heat from the press and too much trouble from the police and you need a little step back. But, in the early days, we couldn't do that. Now you can. You can carry on with the research and carry on with the online, but not necessarily be public facing if you don't always want to be. Because as much as people say, oh, you're always in the media, you think, actually, no, I really don't like it. It's not a pleasure. And it does bring you a lot of heat that comes with it. And so sometimes it's good to step back. I mean, today's surge just made me remember all that because it was such a heavy media day this morning outside Lancashire County Council. And it brought it all rushing back from the last time. And knowing now what the next 2 weeks is going to be like, and you kind of just like take a deep breath and plow on, it's going to be a nightmare until the 26th. And then God knows what happens on the 26th when final decisions are done. But I think that with the people studying this type of movement, I think you'd really struggle. I remember reading a book in business once that was called, I think, The Starfish and the Spider. And it was about how if your company operated like a spider, if you pull off its head, it dies. If it operates like a starfish, you can pull off any part of it and it goes on and it procreates and it carries on. And that's what I see in the fracking movement. I see that no matter what happens in any area, it doesn't make anyone think, oh, I've got to walk away from this or I can't go on if so-and-so is not here. None of us care. You just plow on anyway.
Absolutely. And in fact, I mean, for anybody who is interested in actually looking at maybe some of the academic work that has been done prior to the evolution of the UK anti-fracking movement, and I mean, they should look at the work of, I think it's Don Becks. And I think I'm right in saying that he is the person who came up with the term of the holicky. So, this is a holistic organisation.
Oh, okay.
But of course, there is no organisation. I mean, that's the whole beauty of it. And the term itself is actually contradictory. The holicky, the holistic structure, where it's constantly moving, and different people are sort of stepping to the fore as they bring their strengths to play, and everyone else recognises the strengths they have to offer, etc., etc.
And surprising new people arrive all the time.
Absolutely.
And surprising new people that arrive all the time bring something new, and you're like, what a great way of doing it. Why didn't we think of that?
And every time another well site or targeted well site is announced, then it brings more people. I mean, iGas, they've really started to focus on Misson Springs, and what they've unleashed in the village of Misson is really something else. It's amazing. It's absolutely brilliant. You know what? I actually wish that they would announce all of their well sites right now, because, that would be such a gift.
Because you know what else they're doing for us? It's like they're harvesting a much more beautiful Britain, because all of these people, and I've seen it with the nanas and with lots of other people who came to this, and for the first time it was their first activism was to come to with the fracking movement, and seeing people blossom and grow with their self-empowerment, with the realization that you can actually take the driving seat. You don't have to sit back and be done to, that you can actually go out and start making changes happen. And watching what that does to people is just so satisfying, that it makes them greater people to be around, because they become more of whatever they were, So yeah, without risk getting mushy, I mean, that is the huge silver lining to this, that it's a hell of a fight. It's been really exhausting. 4 years down the line, it's just like, Jesus, will this ever stop? But wow, who did I meet along the way,
Well, absolutely. And as you may well know, I've been running a series of conferences over the past few years called The Alternative View. And I deliberately do not promote them amongst the anti-fracking community. Yeah. I work on the principle that if anybody is actually interested, they'll find it. And what was fascinating is at the last event, AV6, I think we had about a dozen, which is like about 8% of the total people there, were people from the anti-fracking community who had started to explore other issues beyond fracking. Yeah. But it was fracking that was their portal. It was their portal into sort of scratching beneath the surface, digging a little bit deeper, and realizing that actually, the world is maybe a slightly different place than that which the mainstream media cracked it up to be.
Actually, I recall walking down the hill at Volcom when you arrived. It was when you just arrived. And we talked about this because we only just knew each other around that time. And I remember we were talking as you were coming down to camp, and I'd been there already. And I was telling you what it was like, and how so many of the villagers, were very tentative because, it was a brand new thing. They'd never seen anything like it. And I remember saying, will your focus be fracking? You said, oh, yeah, only fracking for this. And I thought, what a really good decision that was, because you could not unify if you asked people to take a step further. No. All you could say is this is the one thing. Do you think fracking is a risk to your air and water? Yes. If you then say, do you think this is because we live, in a mock democracy and that capitalism isn't working, then you're asking too much.
Absolutely.
You know that you only have to give them the gift of fracking.
Yep.
The rest they will discover along the way.
Exactly.
Because once you start in, you can't unknow it, you can't walk away, you can't dump it. You have to keep on going. And then you just bump into the rest of the stuff.
Well, and of course, the other gift was the white paper on deep geological disposal. Published in July of last year, which, of course, also made people realise that there might actually be, no pun intended, but a deeper agenda even beyond the unconventional gas. And then, of course, the vote in Parliament after the budget on the 25th of March, where 277 in favour, 33 against, for removing all participation of local authorities in the decision-making process of where toxic waste should be disposed around the country. And once again, these are absolute gifts, because, anybody who sort of was still under the illusion that their elected representatives were looking after their best interests, explain that one.
Uh-huh. And you look at things like that, and also what else does that expose? It's like I met Zane's parents, the people who were looking for justice because Zane died when the gas from the landfill filled his house. Yep. And he was 7 and he died, and his father's now in a wheelchair for life. And I met them at the Reclaim the Power camp, and I was trying to think of, how do you tie these stories together because they're linked? And then you realize that the Environmental Agency was responsible for keeping them safe. And if we have these gold standard regulations, where were they for Zane and his parents, And so why do we imagine they would be better in fracking? And then it went through today, the EA11, which is just stripping away any pretense of gold standard regulations. I read something the other day where it said, no more gold standard regulations, we're going for cardboard standard. I thought, yeah, that's what it is, where they're going to produce this standard thing that instantly fast tracks your planning for fracking, because they've changed the meaning of fracking. So for those little pre-fracks, which still, are fracking, they've now renamed them so that we can fast track this. But, in the end, if you ask the guy the question, well, does it result in fractured shale? They would have to say yes. So you have just described fracking, but you're going to give it a different name. How stupid do they think we are,
Well, the reality is they do think we're not only stupid, but they also think that, we're not going to pursue it to the nth degree. And what they're finding, of course, is that more and more people are educating themselves. In fact, they're becoming better educated than the industry representatives, which is why, basically they're losing out at a lot of the planning meetings. But, the other factor here is that they also know that every time they come up before any kind of planning committee, whether that's the North York Moors Planning Committee or Lancashire County Council, they know that those councillors are under scrutiny like never before.
Yeah.
And consequently, they are being forced to investigate the issues, whereas in the past they've simply just rubber stamped it. Now, there is an exception, East Yorkshire, which is a total embarrassment to democracy, where 10 days ago now, but we saw them rubber stamp Rathlin Energy's application to establish the West Newton B well site, and in the afternoon do a complete 180 and use exactly the reverse arguments to justify preventing an extension of 3 windmills to an existing wind farm. So, East Yorkshire Council are working on the basis that basically the local population will just roll over and accept it now that due process has been followed. And by the way, one of the things that I have from the inside track is that it is Tory-held constituencies that are being deliberately targeted. So, people would think that it would be the opposite, right? Okay, here's why. And this is their perverted thought process. Their belief is that they go through due process and, the charade of due process, but once due process has been followed and the ultimate decision is go ahead, that the traditional Tory community will say, oh, well, we tried our best, and then just roll over and let it happen and follow the rule of law. What they are, in my opinion, completely underestimating is the growing number of people who are coming to the realization that due process is bankrupt, and all they're left with is effectively to take to the streets.
I think you're exactly right. And that totally makes sense as to why they would choose conservative areas, because I think the least pliable people are not conservative.
Exactly.
So he's going to stand up. Whereas your conservative, you're right, he's going to do what... That's the thing that we talk about before with John Ashton, that... a climate diplomat for 30 years of the Labour Party. And he described it as implied inevitability, where you just accept that because the man in the suit or the government or the white coat says it, well, it's got to happen anyway. There's nothing you can do. And that's such a weakness and such a, you've got to ask, where's your spine if you accept that, But I think you could be right. I think, and also maybe they also think that in conservative-led areas that they will, smooth it through councils and so on as well. So at least they've got people on the inside. So, but you've got to hope that the Conservatives wake up to this. Although there was no sign of it getting too close to George Osborne's constituency, certainly in the surrounding areas, but, like smack bang in his no. But, over in Yorkshire, I think Frack-Free Rydale, how we were just talking about groups, and they all have a different personality. To me, Frack-Free Rydale is one of the best for resources. I mean, they're amazing. They research thoroughly. Everything's shareable. You can trust where they've got their knowledge from. I just think they're one of the most amazing groups that we have. And I think Yorkshire's got a huge fight in his hand. Well, Rathlin's got a huge fight in his hands.
Well, that's East Yorkshire, and that's not Rydale. That's East Yorkshire. But I think what you've just stated applies to both East Yorkshire and also to Rydale, which is North Yorkshire. And of course, the beauty is that, the groups aren't in each other's pockets, but of course, they're 50 odd miles apart, and they are sharing. Yeah. And because of the demographic there's a lot of retirees, and most of those retirees are, to the greater extent, financially independent. and they have time. And that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons that the research is so outstanding, is because they actually have the time and they have a professional background. So, they are extremely capable of analysing the data.
But who knew that was going to be the sector of the community that got woken up to come and fight fracking? Because, I mean, I think the government was probably just hoping it would be as they labelled us, like eco-terrorists and, just hippies and people who are, whatever. They're always, like, labelling us with something. But you can't label, like, people we know up here as well, like Pat, Mavis, Barbara. You can't label any of them as anything that's remotely activist, because these are just regular citizens, And I spoke to one of the ladies today outside Lancashire County Council. She was so concerned, and she sold her house for 53,000 loss on it. And you look at these people and you think, they didn't deserve this. These people worked really hard all their lives to save for their home and hope they had a safe, secure retirement. So, I mean, I'm glad they're waking up. They're an incredible force to have on board. And again, it really works as well with that breaking down of social barriers, and bringing together people so that we become a greater mass of we the people.
Absolutely. Well, the sad thing is that lady that sold her house for a £53,000 loss, of course, if Quadrilla do actually go ahead, then she's going to have seemed to have got a really good price. Now, earlier today, I got a screenshot here. This is a view on the BBC this morning, and I was breaking the habits of the last 15 years, and did actually manage to find a TV and watch this live. And a few.
That's not like you, Ian.
No. Well, it was early in the morning, and I was out. So I managed to find a TV that was on and tuned to the station, and then so I got obviously the up to the minute announcement that the council officers of Lancashire County Council were going to recommend that the planning committee approve the application for Quadrilla to establish an exploratory well and potentially FRACK, of course, the well at Preston New Road, but reject the one at Rothery. So what are your thoughts on this?
It was almost exactly as we expected. We knew Rothery was always going to be the hardest one to get because of the traffic. I mean, the roads are atrocious. Even the guy in the council said, if this goes ahead, all the roads to the file will collapse, and it's just so difficult in Rothery. But it doesn't mean it's over for them either, because even if it gets rejected, there is the chance of appeal, because they're saying it's only the traffic. So Quadrilla will find some way of saying, but we could mitigate again, So we weren't surprised with the result, obviously upset, because it's always sad. But in the end, today was not a big day. Today was the guy from planning saying what they felt, and I'm sure they're told how to feel. But between now and decision day, you have all those 30-minute presentations from the actual residents, from experts that have been brought in, from geologists and doctors, all talking about the case against fracking. And those 15 councillors will hear all of that between now and decision day. And we watched the effect that had last time, and it was quite profound in some cases. Some of these stories will move you unless you're a rock, So a lot of these councillors, we watch them being impacted, and they live here too. So I think there is some hope that you can say that perhaps the humanity of this area gets through. But, in the end, will we ever win? No, because even if our council has the wisdom to say no to both applications, then we know full well that the government is going to take this in hand, make it a national, and then they're going to take it out of the hands of local councils anyway. So, but what we thought, and we thought about this and we spoke about it the other day, is that if we get the no on both sides, because the people's case won, and that's really important, that we celebrate and relish that for the time that we have it, so that by the time it comes for the government to try and snatch that back off us, we've warmed to it so much, we've made it our own. So our fight back would be even stronger.
Well, of course, it does buy time to raise even more awareness, not only of the insidious nature of the industry, but also of the fact that due process effectively is bankrupt, and that the council have attempted to represent the people, but have effectively been overridden by the corporate paymasters. Now, on January 28th, which was the last meeting at Preston, when the current applications were deferred, there was a short presentation or a short response by Councillor Holgate, which is really quite disturbing. And I just want, it only runs for about 2 minutes, but I just want you to watch this for a second.
County Councillor Stephen Holgate.
Thank you, Chairman. Some people have had heavy hearts. Some people have been frustrated. I am just downright angry. And when I'm angry, it's usually best that I shut up. But on this occasion, I'm not going to. Because I feel that we, as the Planning Committee, are being undermined to an extent. And I feel that there are too many people dipping their fingers into responsibilities that are not theirs. This goes right to the top, unfortunately. I have a document here in front of me that's addressed to the Economic Affairs Committee members of Parliament from George Osborne. And he's saying simply, we need to implement the development of 3 to 4 exemplary drilling sites to prove the concept of shale gas, safe shale gas. That, as far as I can recall, is for us to determine. I accept that it would be foolhardy to reject legal advice, because we'll be doing ourselves a disservice, and we'll be doing all the people of Lancashire who have a democratic right to contribute to this debate a disservice as well. So I will be abstaining.
Okay, that was Councillor Holgate. Now, what he was saying there obviously was very disturbing for him, but for anybody watching this, it should also raise some alarm bells, because what we are hearing from all around the country is that these councillors and certainly members of the planning committees are being put under enormous pressure to rubber stamp these applications. Now, the concern here is that Councillor Holgate stated categorically that he was effectively incandescent at the outside pressure being applied for the councillors to make decisions that he rightly says were theirs to make. But then he abstains. So clearly the pressure, was so great that he didn't feel that he could go the whole hog and vote the way he wanted to do. He simply abstained. Now, what we've also heard is that in North Yorkshire, in Rydale, the council officers have actually told the councillors that the council insurance will not cover them in the event of the industry suing them as a result of rejecting their planning application. Now, this, of course, is effectively what the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership is all about, which is establishing a raft of legislation that is supranational. In other words, it operates above the national legislation, giving the corporations supremacy over sovereign law. So this is now the extent to which councillors are being prepared for the apparent imminence, although fortunately there are a number of people, again, who are starting to see the magnitude of this threat and fight against it. But Tina-Louise, this is once again prima facie example of the fact that the corporatocracy is wielding enormous pressure.
Yeah, and this is one of the biggest hurts, I think, that comes to people who are fresh to this when they look into fracking, is seeing the way the mechanisms of the system work or don't work. Well, they work for them, and how little they work for us, and all those things you imagine were in place to keep us safe and cared for and that we paid into the system for aren't there. It's myth and mirrors. When Holgate abstained, I expect it's because whatever threats and pressure he had felt from outside to not vote against to not vote against it, maybe that was his little cry for help, his way of saying, I can't vote against this because there's such incredible pressure, even though he can't define what it is. So he can't vote for it, he can't vote for against it. So at least he didn't vote for it, An abstention was maybe the best we could hope for, depending on what pressure he was put under. Obviously we expect them to act with their conscience and their moral and for the people that they're elected to represent. But in the absence of that, which we've clearly established there is an absence of that. Yeah.
Well, what's also interesting is that let's have a look at what the market thought about today's announcement. Now, I'm not 100% sure that there would have been any opportunity in Australia to take advantage of the announcement. But let's have a look. This is the stock movements of AJ Lucas, which is a 25% owner of Quadrilla. And this, by the way, is the jump here. This jump here, let's see if I can get the mouse over it. That jump there is the jump after the announcement of the election results. So that was the degree of confidence in Australia that the unrestrained or unconstrained Tory government, now that they're out of the coalition, would get the industry rolling. And so the stock price jumped from under 30 pence to, in fact, around about 57 pence.
It was pretty bottom, though, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It was in the toilet here.
Yeah.
And in fact, AJ Lucas was looking like it was going into bankruptcy. And clearly in Australia, the election result was hyped as being, like the holy grail for unconventional gas in the UK. But look what's happened since. Basically, it's tailed off. And in fact, let's get a bit.
That's better.
There we go. So it's tailed off. Here's the election. Tailed off, right? And basically, today, look, like I said, I'm not sure that there's been any opportunity because the announcement came at around about 10 o'clock UK time. In fact, it was after 10 o'clock. Which would have been after the Australian markets closed. So it's going to be interesting to see in the next 2 or 3 hours when the Australian markets open, what happens to the AJ Lucas stock price on the back of this announcement today.
But no matter how you look at it, they're so far from where they used to be.
Oh, absolutely.
They were so high once upon a time.
If we look at that, all of the companies, they've all come, basically downhill. And of course, we'll take a look at iGas in a little while. But
just to cheer ourselves up a little.
Absolutely, But
sometimes when I'm sad, I look at the stock market.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and you can see that it's really the mug punters. Having said that, if they bought and sold at the right point, then some of them have made out like absolute bandits.
Yeah.
But those who bought, any time before June last year, are in a big hole. Now, of course, the industry is also mounting a massive campaign locally, and I know that there's been a lot of pro-industry posters on bus shelters all around the Fylde area. Here's one I picked up, earlier this evening. Producing our own gas rather than importing it will benefit the whole country, not just the local area.
That's a big message. They've been pushing that message, which is kind of like, you should sacrifice yourself for the country. This is for the good of the country. If Lancashire won't do it, you've got to let us all down and let yourself down, and it's quite amazing. You can read their ploys are pathetic and they haven't grown their argument. That's the difference too. In 4 years, we have grown in our wisdom and our awareness and our research and our size. They have stayed the same. And their arguments are the same. They just sometimes package them a little differently in the hope of hoodwinking us again. But, there's no way they can say it lowers prices. There's no way they can say, it's like today again, the BBC Lancashire was saying, but hey, we've got to keep the lights on. I'm like, oh. And I said, how long do you think it will take for shale gas to come online and contribute to keeping the lights on? And the guy went, I don't know. And I thought, well, no, you wouldn't. God damn, you wouldn't research the subject, would you? And I said, well, it's at least 10 to 15 years off actually, coming online and contributing. You've got a load of infrastructure to put in place first to get that gas to the grid. And And as it said, and it was the infrastructure bill, wasn't it, on 25th of January? And in there, late that night, just before it was released, like 1 minute past midnight, there was another report by the Economic Committee that said, in all honesty, by the time shale gas comes online, the cost of renewables will be so low, there will be no point in using shale gas.
Which, of course, then starts to beg the question, what the real agenda is. Now, here's a graphic that I've used a few times. This is the area of southern Queensland that I was in last year. And, of course, this was the core area that I was in for the filming of Voices from the Gas Fields. Such
a brilliant film, Ian. So rate that film. Really moving, really honest, and just, I loved that film. It was brilliant.
Well, hey, listen, I got an accolade from Leo Sayer.
Good God.
In fact, he actually posted it on the 1st of May, just a few hours after the film had gone online. And I didn't see it for 3 weeks, but I'm going to return the compliment because at the end of the show, I'm going to play Leo's video of the fracking song that he produced 18 months ago called No Fracking Way, which is a great song. But yeah, I really appreciated Leo's comments and your comments too. And I mean, and I'm very grateful to Marco for really dropping everything else to help me work and edit the film. And of course, we actually put it out online 5 months to the day after I left the Monk Ranch in southern Queensland. And this graphic here shows the comparable area, of the literally thousands of gas wells in southern Queensland. I mean, there are 12,000 gas wells. 9,000 of them have been drilled, in the last 7 years. And, that's the marked out area is the comparable area in East Yorks, West Sussex and the Fylde. And it doesn't actually bear thinking about. So Tina-Louise, we've got obviously a big event in Preston on Tuesday of next week.
Yeah, it's a full 4 days actually. So we're actually from the 23rd to the 26th in Preston at Lancashire County Council offices. On the 23rd and the 24th, the council will, on the 23rd, discuss the Preston New Road application and hear from the public. On the 24th, they will make their decision about Preston New Road's application. On the 25th, they will discuss Rosica, and on the 26th, they will decide for Rosica. So we've got actions every day from the 23rd to the 26th. We've been so lucky with this amazing community that is, between Friends of the Earth and FRACK Off, have all chipped in, and everyone's got coaches coming from all across the country. There's overnight stays for people. People are paying like £10, getting a return coach from the south and an overnight stay either in a hotel or a campsite. Because we really want people to stay from the 23rd at least to the 24th, because we think that will be the important day where they decide Preston New Road, which is the most unpredictable of them and the one they're most likely to try for. So we want as many people there as possible. Last time we did this, when we had the planning earlier in the year, we got around 1,000 people and a street full of tractors. It was marvellous. This time round, I think we're going to be so much bigger. Talk Fracking's team got hold of us, and as did Climate Revolution. So Vivian West was going to be coming up on the 23rd. Natalie Bennett's bringing the Green Party message on the 24th. But in between times, we've got the groups coming from far and wide. I don't know anybody who isn't coming. That's the amazing thing, that out of all these groups we have connections with, and I know so many are coming, and that you don't want to rejoice in the day because it's got to be awful fighting this, but just knowing that many people will come is so uplifting.
And a word of caution, while everybody's eyes are on Lancashire, it's absolutely crucial that we keep our eyes on what's going on in Westminster and what they try and sneak in under the radar whilst people are focused on Lancashire. It's a good day for the establishment to try and bury any other bad news that they might have here.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm well aware of that. But, in the end, we have to, for our own community, because even though, so many people do now know about it, there are still swathes of our community we haven't reached. People too busy to notice. And that's, a huge chunk of your population just being kept busy standing still, So for us, this is a huge spotlight. for 4 days where we are going to seize every opportunity to make sure that there's no one in Lancashire who doesn't know about this. And that, because it matters on so many levels, because this is the first big application. So if this goes through, it sets a precedent across the country. Whereas if we can stop this, that gives us the impetus to go on and stop it elsewhere. And the awareness that as people of a community, you can do this. And that would mean a great deal. And I think there's a lot of people looking to see how this turns out. And apart from anything else, a lot of people just genuinely care about Lancashire now. A lot of people have warmed to the desolate north and the people who've come on various actions and so on. So, we really do feel supported. And that's an amazing feeling,
Well, it's a very important day because, sadly, I mean, I won't go into the detail, but precisely as I predicted, and I don't claim any special insight. I've just been doing geopolitical analysis for a decade plus, and it was pretty evident that Mark Menzies was going to be returned with a greater majority than in 2010. And, of course, that's exactly what happened, albeit just by 39 votes. But nonetheless, Westminster are, of course, lauding the fact that Menzies was returned with a greater majority than in 2010. So it's absolutely crucial that the whole region and the country comes together to let it be known that that result doesn't really matter, because the bottom line is that the people of the region and of the country are not going to allow Lancashire to be a sacrifice zone.
Menzies' result, as soon as the results were in for a lot of the election places, Hastings as well, we set up a group in Facebook called Problems with Voting, mainly because on the day I was going down to the count in Tatton, and I had a voter call me and say, hey, I can't vote, and I want to vote. I want to vote for you, and my son wants to vote Labour. And we've been told by the council, we got a letter saying we're not on the register until June. And so I rang the council straight away for her, and they said, oh, no, it was an error. A whole batch went out, a batch of letters telling people they couldn't vote because they weren't on the the roll. And whereas if they called up, they found out they could vote. But how many people just didn't bother? And that was only a tiny example. So I put that in, and the Facebook group just populated rapidly. And then we heard about, like in the file where Mark Menzies was voted in, that one councillor went back to an office and brought back a ballot box alone in his car. How does that happen?
Yeah.
No one's alone with a ballot box, And I watched, I went and stood by the doors where the ballot boxes came in Tatton. And I was quite surprised at the obvious ways you could so easily change the way things were done, and I don't feel any confidence at all.
Well, we've actually been discussing this on Humanity versus Insanity for the last few weeks, and the reality is that there is increasing evidence from various locations around the country of electoral fraud, and in most cases involving supposed postal votes.
Yeah, postal votes was the one.
Absolutely.
I really thought about that as well. Also, I look back to previous elections in Tatton, and on the previous election, George Osborne had been pulled for this strange anomaly of his postal votes. He'd got the highest percentage of postal votes of anywhere in the country. It was raised in the House of Commons, so we knew that was going to be an area to watch out for. Not that there was anything we could do anyway. That you go, wow, that looks like a lot of postal votes you got there. Well, then what do you say? Then how do you address that?
Well, I would encourage people to look at the results of Sedgefield in 2005, Tony Blair's election. The election when, of course, he was the most or least popular MP in the country and the least popular Prime Minister because of his taking the country into 2 illegal wars. And he was elected with a greater majority than in the previous election. But interestingly, the official number of the Sedgefield electorate is recorded as 66,666. You couldn't really make that up, could you? Anyway, Tina-Louise, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
An absolute pleasure. And, of course, I shall look forward to seeing you in Preston next Tuesday. Hopefully along with a very significant chunk of the country.
I hope so.
So, anyone watching this, do whatever it is that you can to get the word out. And let me just go back to this slide on the screen here. If you want to travel by coach, there's coaches going from Manchester, Chester, Wrexham, Ellesmere Port, London, Guildford, Brighton, Lewes, Boreham, Portsmouth and Nottingham. And to book your coach, go to coaches@frackstop.org.uk.
And can I just say, use the hashtag for this event is FRACK_STOPS_HERE. So hashtag FRACK_STOPS_HERE, because the event is called the FRACK Stops Here too, because we did this once before. So the hashtag FRACK_STOPS_HERE, and yeah, if you can find any way of getting to Preston. Lancashire County Council's literally across the road from the train station and just 5 minutes from the bus station.
Oh, I can assure you that anybody coming by bus or train will not be able to miss it. Just follow the crowd.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot, Tina, and see you next week. Absolute pleasure to talk with you, and well done for your press work today.
Oh, thank you very much. Talk to you soon, sweetheart. See
Absolutely.
You then.
Take care now. Take care. Well, I was going to be heading up to North Yorkshire, really straight after the show tonight, but the meeting of the North York Moors Planning Committee discussing the re-injection well on Eberston Moor has been deferred, which of course gives us even more time to raise awareness of the risks associated with this particular operation in North Yorkshire. Drilling through and re-injecting through the aquifer that provides the water for Scarborough. And as the Planning Committee's own hydrologist, or own consultant hydrologist stated, there is no plan B if anything goes wrong with that aquifer. So I've got a few days to prepare some other stuff before heading up to Lancashire for next week. Now, at the moment, there is not going to be an episode of Fracking Nightmare next Monday, but watch this space because things can change. Now, I did say we take a look at the iGas stock price before we leave, and here it is. It's actually up around just above 30 pence right now. So once again, I mean, those who bought in when it dropped below 20 are making out like bandits. But it's not going anywhere fast. And obviously the people at Misson and Ellesmere and anywhere else that iGas are thinking of drilling an exploratory well, please, and make the announcements. Because as soon as you guys make the announcements, then it gives us the opportunity to get the local communities engaged. And it increases our effectiveness exponentially. So we're heading towards the end of the programme now, but we missed a second break. But hey, we've covered a lot of ground thanks to Tina-Louise joining me this evening. But as I said, I do want to acknowledge Leo Sayers' kind words after he had reviewed Voices from the Gasfields. Voices from the Gasfields is available on YouTube. Simply search Voices from the Gasfields. It's now been up for about 6 weeks. It had 6,000 views in the first week, and according to YouTube, it's had about 4,500 in the subsequent 5 weeks. But not too shabby, but just keep sharing it. Let's get the word out there, because once people do realise what is coming to their community, they will engage in the process. So thanks to Leo Sayer. I would love to invite Leo to join me on a future edition of Fracking Nightmare. But meanwhile, enjoy his music video, No Fracking Way, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Lesson 1, load your gun, drill the land till kingdom come. Lesson 2, grease some wheels, gas and sexy, spin a deal.
Excellent, thank you very much, sir.
Lesson 3, something leaks, poison water, spread disease. Did you think we'd stand by and let you do it? No! Did you think we'd stand by and let you do it? No! No fracking way! No fracking way! Get your dirty mitts up! Pack up, go away! No fracking way! No fracking way! We ain't gonna move! We ain't gonna sway! You're asking, so I tell you, mate. No fracking way! it means.
Okay.
Get off
That's
your
not
butt,
right.
raise your voice, tell these fools you ain't got no choice.
Is there a difference in
Yeah, are we gonna stand by and let them do it?
Yeah.
No! Are we gonna stand by and let them do it? No! No fracking way! No fracking way! Greedy money is the game! We ain't gonna play! No fracking way! No fracking way! Take your gravy train! Go back where you came! Get out of my face! Get off my place! No fracking way! No way!
Apparently my mic.
I was born and I was raised right here.
Yeah, my daddy was a farmer here.
And my kids are growing up around here. Yeah, we love the countryside around here.
Will we sit back and let it all go on?
Or do we fight what the government's done? It's our land that we're living on.
So let's mobilize before the diggers come. Yeah! Woo! So lock the gate behind you. Take your shovels, take your picks.
Ain't nothing here that's broken, nothing in me